Hi, my name is Patricia Rollinson, and this is Beth Wagner.
Yes.
And we're live at the NET Convention 2012. The NET Convention stands for New England Traditions, and it is a decorative painting convention. And Beth Wagner is here to share with us roses. Why don't you show us a little bit what you got going on here?
People who maybe aren't familiar with me may not know about my roses, but that is the thing that I am most well known for. I love painting them. I have a special technique to paint them, which I will show.
Excellent.
And I also love romantic, kind of busy backgrounds, and usually it takes me a long time to get them done. But with Patty's things, I achieved this. You're not going to believe it. Both things probably took me 2 hours.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, because I paint the roses so quickly, and with Patty's
the collage papers. This one is
Thank you.
collage, and you can tell it's collage. We're going to move the camera so that Beth can show you what we've got going on here.
Great.
All right, Beth, show us what you've got going on with this.
Okay,
Beautiful banner.
Combination of everything. I started with the rock lawn because it makes a great banner. But I wanted to do more than just my stipple background, which I love doing.
Okay.
So I picked up one of Patty's collage pieces, again romantic. What can be more romantic than Paris and the Eiffel Tower? Because I like my roses to be romantic. And I like to wet, rip, and then do a little bit of brushing with my umbers, my different natural tones.
So when you wet rip, what do you, because we're not going to cover how you actually glue this down. This is done like the image transfer. You do it with the decoupage medium over there, and you leave it on there. This is not actually transferred.
No, it is not, because Patty's going to show me how to do that when I'm a big girl.
I'd be happy to, yeah.
I
so
love those
talk
too.
to me about this wet.
All right, I like to rip because it gives it that old burned look. So I dampen my edges with a brush.
After it's glued down?
Before.
Okay.
So I would take this, I'm not going to do it to this one, and I will dampen this with my brush, a little at a time, and then I start to rip, and I pull forward, and I get this nice uneven edge. Do you remember we used to do it with candles?
I don't.
And oh yes, and you burn the whole thing sometimes.
Oh so, yeah, with fire, yes. I still do it with fire, so I like this.
This is much safer.
Yeah, I like it. It's better.
Okay, and then I take, and especially in this case because of these beautiful sepia colors, I took desert sand, umber, and a little raw sienna, and I brush in. Do not go along the edge. That's what people tend to do. I brush in with a damp cloth so I can pat, and I get this look.
I love it.
Let it dry thoroughly before I glue it down.
Okay. Collage
it down, and then what else am I going to do? I didn't want even just that plain. I like multiple things, and I love, forgive, it's not clean because I'm very bad, but it holds up. This stencil is gorgeous, and I hope you can see all of the old kind of
it's the distressed. Yeah, it's a distressed.
Together
harlequin.
We can figure this out, and you can see it. And of course, would I put it straight? Absolutely not. You want some interest. Absolutely.
It just frames it over there.
It does.
It cuts that corner.
And I don't like everything in the same direction. Just like I don't like everything straight or everything round. You want variation. And of course, the topper. These are fabulous. These are really, really fabulous, and I wanted to hang this not just from the same old boring whatever.
A bar with a dowel.
Yes,
it looks so 70s.
Yeah, it certainly does. So, what could be prettier than this? My other favorite stencil.
I love that. Look at the keys.
So
the keys and the
many
words. They're so romantic.
ways you can go with this. And of course, I pulled my colors back and forth. You always want to coordinate your colors. Okay. So we've taken this and I've base painted in the same soft greens that I've used in the design that I'll talk about later. And then Paris and France. We have to have a fleur-de-lis. Of course I used the fleur-de-lis.
Now you painted this a color and then you put the gold on top?
No, I actually used my stencil.
Okay.
Used the decoupage glue. I'm not sure if that's correct.
You know, I think it is. I think it's supposed to work.
When I do it right. And then let it dry, and then I put your gold leaf in.
Okay, awesome.
And what could be prettier and more romantic than the gold leaf?
Now, did you sponge this?
No, I just took my little finger, wonderful tool, and just put on some of the.
All right.
Yep. And let it dry, and then look at the butterflies.
I love the butterflies.
Are they gorgeous?
You know what's neat is, can you reflect that, kind of move it around a little bit? So that
the
they
way
can
it picks
see.
up the
Yeah.
light. It's just
It's flat
beautiful.
in some places, shiny in others.
Because
it's
I
distressed.
intentionally didn't want it solid gold.
Yeah.
That would work
be heavy.
against all
Yeah.
this wonderful distressed look.
I agree.
That's my background.
Love it.
And then we get to the roses, and we'll talk about that later, but I always use my chalk pencil and think about how I want my roses to be. And again, very romantic curved line, working with this straight line.
Okay.
And then because I had the gold leafing, I took some gold paint and just edged my...
Okay. To bring it all together.
Mhm.
So you've got the gold working from the top all the way down the bottom, so we got a little design tips there as
Absolutely, and bring your greens. You must bring your greens up here. Once you start with your palette, you need to carry it around.
well. Okay, good tip. I love your roses. Your roses
Oh,
are
thank you.
you're my rose hero. So I can't wait to, let's get on to the next part.
Yeah, and I love to paint them.
Yeah, I know, it shows.
Okay.
All right, Beth, one of the things that you tell me is that you can actually do different size roses with the same technique.
Absolutely.
Okay, so all of these size roses?
All of these size roses, from this little teeny tiny one
Okay.
to this kind of medium sized one to these quite big ones.
They're quite large.
Yes.
And it's all the same technique.
Same technique.
Excellent. And
And
just different size brush.
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I'm sorry. And also you can, if you look, this one probably has 4 strokes. Well, maybe 6 strokes. But you can get as difficult or as
Detailed. Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
As a really finished rose.
Okay.
It's the same technique. It's called cone.
Tone.
I call it the cone.
Oh, the cone. Okay, gotcha.
Because it brings all of your petals back to your stem.
Okay.
And so I'm going to set up my palette.
All right.
I think my roses are popular for several reasons. They're quick, once you learn, you have to practice. The value change in them, that they're very soft and blended, and the angular petals. They're not round petals, and you look down into my rose, that is not shaken enough. And when I paint my roses, I paint with 3 values. Today we're going to use values that are quite different so that you can really see the contrast. It'll make things easier for you.
So they won't be quite as
Delicate,
yeah.
as soft.
Okay.
Because that'll be a little harder to see. I would love to, at another time, if Patty and I talk together, give you some of the unusual combinations I use, like, we can pull this up for one quick sense. This is actually green
Oh,
and
interesting.
highlight flesh with a tint of pink.
Love it.
So we'll talk about that some other time. But for now, setting up the palette, very important. I always work on a damp palette, a wet palette, because it keeps my paint thin. I use a lot of paint,
Okay.
but it's very thin. And I work with what I call a damp brush, not soaking wet. I paint with a flat brush. You can do anything I do with a flat, you can do with an angle. Middle value is poodle skirt pink, I have antique mauve, and I have white. When I load my brush, I take my middle value and sweep it back and forth. It's not this.
Okay.
I'm sweeping it so that I keep a nice thin blend. Pick up the antique rose, or my darkest value, one corner, and walk
And you
it up.
moved north of the puddle of pink. I
And
noticed.
always slightly outside. And then I'm picking up my lightest value, in this case white, because we want that good contrast slightly above, and then I'm walking it down. So what I'm looking for is from a very dark to a very light blend.
Beautiful.
Where did I put my... Thank you. I always need an assistant to help me find things.
You can call me Gladys.
Now, here's the cone, and I do hope this white pencil shows up. If not, we'll switch to a darker pencil. Cone, extremely arched.
I'm going to stop you and we're going to switch to a darker one.
All right, Patty has just showed me something new to me, a Ghost Rider, and that will show up much better. So, here is my cone. The important thing about the cone, it should be symmetrical. It is almost as wide as it is long. It's not an ice cream cone, which would be way down here. It's a snow cone. It's short and
I
wide.
see that.
Okay, and I want that high arch so that you get used to bringing those back petals up, and I want the front petals very deep. Here's my stem, right, because it all starts from a bud, and everything has to give the impression of returning to that stem, which we forget all about when we're painting.
I
We
agree.
get so engrossed in our painting. So back to my little blend over here. I'm going to just, again, sweep my brush out, add a little more paint because
How much
it dries.
water do you have on your palette?
It's damp. It's
damp.
not so.
Yeah, I'm
if
not
it's
feeling
soaking
it's-
wet,
yeah,
if it's soaking wet, then you're going
not
to have
juicy.
trouble. Right.
Yeah.
It's not juicy. And again, remember to sweep. Also, I want you to notice there are no ridges in here.
Absolutely
If there are
none, yeah.
ridges in here, there will be ridges on your rose, and it won't be delicate.
Okay.
So here we go. Step 1. And for teaching purposes, I stay with this. Let me get a little more antique mode.
You kind of worked your brush.
Yeah, right. I stay with 3. You can start with 20 if you like, but for now we go with 3. 1, 2, 3. What I want you to see, diagonal, almost straight across, and diagonal, but it's not this. That's little teeth. We don't want any little teeth.
No teeth.
We want a messy, I'm a very messy painter. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. That is step 1. Step 2.
Do you normally multiple stroke like that?
Oh yeah. Okay. The
So
messier the better.
a couple little
Yeah.
jabs at it? kinda?
Absolutely. I just bump, 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 bump,
All right.
bump, bump.
Gotcha.
Second row, we're coming in and we're coming down. And I will make little arrows to make this clearer. 1, 2, 3. Look at how messy I am. We've got 2
Beautiful
rows
mess.
going. And I'm going to just make it a little bit, for the camera, a little stronger. I wouldn't be this strong if I were painting. Third row, notice I've stepped in and I've stepped down. The next row, same thing, except we're just going to paint what I call a little fan. So again, I'm in and I'm down, and I am just stuttering that around. The thing they have in common is they all have the same curve, and they all step down and they all step in.
Beautiful.
Now we're actually ready to paint that cone. The second row, very light, chisel, chisel, from the top, always from the top, and then the deeper I get this, the prettier it's going to be. You can see the rows almost starting to come.
Beautiful.
Again, I'm going to blend back into here. Same as step 5, same as 4, except I'm working from the outside. And I could show you how to cheat, just put a few more petals in, but I want you to do a full rose, so we're going to go that way. That's the cone. As simple as that. Next thing I suggest, and eventually will you do that? No. But for now, in the beginning, you really need it. And now I'm going to just draw a little oval, and I want that oval to follow that pretty arch. And be just slightly below where our painted cone is. These petals are a little more tricky, and it is flat with a slight rotation, chisel.
Almost an S stroke.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And you can see how angular, if I go quickly, I get that. If I hesitate, I get that. And of course, the better you get, the more comfortable you get, the more wiggly you'll get. And I will do a 1, 2, 3 rows to see how quickly, because they're prettier when I'm fast.
Yeah.
Again, mistake, people drop down here. No, then the center is shooting out. At the top, you want to follow that curve. So here I go, a little more white.
And then white is to the outside.
Yeah, I always say the deeper color is to the center of the rose, and I want them approximately same. Don't measure. All right, we're getting a little bit of the line pulling up. We're not going to worry about that. Always going back into my, and you notice, we're on camera, I never go anyplace else.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah,
back
I
into
see
those.
that.
And if I would add a little green or a little yellow, it would be really beautiful. Okay, this step, we must really rotate that tip. So, rotate, 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 slide up. Rotate, 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 slide up. We're making a little Peter Pan collar that we can stick that next petal in. That petal is pivot and pivot back. That is the outermost petals of the rose. Okay, now we're working towards the cone. It's the same stroke, but without as much pressure. So I'm up here. I've dropped down, just what I dropped down there, I'm going to drop down here. So I am flat chisel, flat chisel, flat chisel, flat chisel.
magic.
Then I'm going to wipe my brush off. I don't want to add water. And I am pulling. I picked up just a little bit of white on one corner. These are the petals that are standing up. These are the petals that are fully open. Now I want the petals that are coming right at you. And I'm always pulling that white. Flat, pressure, and come back up. Flat, pressure, come back up. Flat, pressure, and come back up.
How do you decide where to put them?
I cut across the cone. I usually do about 3 petals, but I'm glad you asked that, Patty. It's almost like you set me up for this. Because I recommend using a chalk pencil until you get, because you don't want to have 2, and that we don't want to face. We want that nice curve, that curve, that curve. And it's usually right there on top of the cone.
Okay.
Now, while that dries, I'm going to quickly give you centers. I have very strong opinions on roses. And the centers, I see people who do a really pretty rose and then they put a big, dark green ball in the middle with their stylus, and that's all you see. So I have a very definite opinion on that. I will use several shades of, or values of green. I almost never work in one color. I'll use my liner brush. If I'm being lazy and don't want to get up from my table, I'll even use the corner of my flat. But I start with my darkest value right across this rim. And it's very compact. It's very close together.
And you have a little water in your brush?
A little too much water that time.
Okay.
And I'm scattering them as I move away from that rim. This gives the impression of depth. While it's still wet, I want to pick up my next lightest value and let the two of them blend together a little and let it come up. And then I'll go to white or pink or blue, whatever I'm kind of in the mood for that day. But what I want you to see when you do this, it's giving the impression of looking even deeper down into that rose. Much different than if you had a big green ball in the middle. It makes a big difference. Now, quickly, a leaf, just because I do them very loose, and I'm trying to give this time to dry so I can show you how I highlight.
Show me how you make this
messy mix,
yes,
as I call
the
it.
messy mix.
It's
yes,
my messy mix. I will use the colors that I'm going to be using in the leaves, and I don't want to shade one on top of the other. I think the biggest problem with leaves is they become too important. I don't want my leaves to be important. I want them to support my flower. So I've picked up some plantation pine. I'll pick up a little of that soft sage, which are all in my background, by the way.
Right.
And usually a little pink goes in there. And then I pick up a little blue. And I will keep going back into that, not all at the same time. And my leaves, again, very unconstructed, very soft. I don't want them heavy or definite. Ooh, I know I've got the petal there, but we'll make believe it's not there. And I just kind of wiggle them in. I don't want them to be as important as my rose at all. Now, because we have a pretty background, which I love, and it'll be even prettier on there, I will leave some. I'm going to do one more. And then we're going to do one where we let the background show through. And if you get in trouble with your leaves, be sure to bring your background color in, and it takes them right down. And I'm going to do...
Good tip.
Oh yeah, it makes a big difference.
Tip. Yeah.
And then I also like to do what I call a negative or a shadow leaf, where I'm actually side loading around where the leaf would be if it were there. On that one, I always be sure that you arch your leaves. Make sure they're very graceful. Don't let them be stiff and long. Short and fat is very good in the case.
Oh, good. Good. Something that gets along with me.
And don't make fish bones. Give very loose, all in the right direction, but not lined up. And then my darker leaves, I put in light veins because that helps set them into the background. Because I don't want them to be important at all. I want you to notice the rose and then say, oh yeah, there are leaves there. Okay, so now I've given myself time for that rose to dry.
Of these
Please
leaves.
do, yeah. And then often I will tint them with a little pink, and which I'm sure I did on that project. Yes, I did. All right, now this is the first time I think I'm working with a clean brush today, because I always work with a dirty brush. And I We'll put white or my lightest value on one corner of my brush, and I'm going to blend it out. When I highlight, I don't highlight every petal. I'll start in the back. My brush is very flat, and as I come forward, I will kind of chop that center in, bring this down. Let's go here.
Oh, that's interesting. So you just did a kind of reverse smash.
You use technical terms like
yes.
me, Patty. Yes. I told people that they had to block the paint on recently.
Love it.
But you can see how you feel that highlight coming down. And of course,
it's almost got like a little path down.
Yeah, a kind of a crescent.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
is typical
That's
of the
really
way I
pretty.
highlight my roses.
Yeah, it's not, I am a soldier.
Nope.
And I'm like, yes, yes, yes,
No,
yes,
no, no.
yes. So this
There
is
is
very lovely.
Nothing studied that I do. I'm a very loose painter. Now, quickly, because we've taken a long time, I'm going to show you how quickly I will paint a rose with this technique after a lot of practice. And the worst thing I did was not keep my first rose, because if people could see it, they would know anyone could paint a rose, if I can paint a rose. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can see how loose, because I have the confidence of knowing where the rose is going. Here. And it'll be so much prettier than the first one because I'm not worried about it. I know the steps, but you have to get those steps in your head and in your hand before you can get to this point.
But paper is cheap and you can practice.
That practice. And what I did, when you have a whole sheet of paper, circle the ones that look good and X the ones out that don't look good. And after a while, you will see a pattern. And I've had many people who have started with this and have created their own rose, which is even better than mimicking mine.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a starting place. So I think that took, I don't know, what do you think, Patty?
Maybe 30 seconds. Not very long. Awesome.
And that's my rose. And
Thank
now
you so
combined
much.
with the
Yes.
backgrounds, I am so excited to paint with these backgrounds.
Thank you so much for visiting us here at NET, and thank you. And we're going to do some more work on maybe some sunflowers and some other things in the future.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Patty.